We're going to continue today with Jennifer Winburn and Holly Tracy talking about data quality. And I do want to mention that some of you may have had some data quality issues as far as with your network bandwidth today. It's probably not on your end. We do see some problems with the network. Earlier this morning, there was a YouTube issue and that seemed to be resolved. And then there's been some network. We think it's good right now, but how long it's going to be good, we're not sure. The recording won't be impacted, so if you do miss something, don't worry, you will be able to get to the recording and it will not have the same impact. So I'm going to turn this over to, I think Jen's going to start us off, so thank you very much.
Good morning again. Holly and I are tag teaming today to bring to you Make Your Data Work for You, data quality. We're hoping with this topic, you can start looking at your data, looking for data quality issues to go on and get that cleaned up and clear. Data is important. The cleaner, the better. So our agenda items we're going to cover today are data health check reports, state enrollment verification report, filtering, how to use your QA reports in Excel to find those data quality issues easily. And then we're going to review QA student counts, QA special education, QA free and reduced lunch, and QA English learners. Those are all custom reports that we provide from KDE.
And Jen, I'm going to just jump in right here with my little commentary. You might think, why do I care? Well, you're going to make your life a whole lot easier if you can be proactive on some of this stuff. The items we're going over are common errors and issues that people at the last minute are trying to resolve during SDRR when it's open or something else. Federal reporting is not matching, school report cards open and we're trying to validate data. The cleaner you can have your data initially, the less work you're going to have to do when you've got a real true time crunch. And it's not all on one person. As they go through these reports, think about it in the district. Who is the best person to look at this data? One person can't do it all. It takes a village. It takes a team. And I know at KDE, we feel the same way. This is not work that we all do ourselves. We've got data stewards in KDE that are helping us do that. So think about how best that works in your district. I'm sorry, Jen, to jump in right away. You probably were going to say all that, but I wanted to make sure we tagged it with that at the beginning.
You're more than welcome. Tag in anytime. And like Dee Dee said, if the work is not on one person alone in a district, it's hard to be a system admin and try your best to make sure all the data is checked and the quality is there, but use your counterparts in your district. So as we go through these reports and you see a report, make sure you check your user groups to see if the director of special ed has the QA special ed report. Check your user groups to make sure people who need to look at your data health, as what we're getting ready to go on, have the tool rights. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the data health check, which is a part of campus analytics, and we have that for another 3 years. So this report, I'm going to pull out the district hat for just a moment. When I was in the district and I first had access to the data health check for report, it opened my eyes. It opened my eyes. We were doing some great things. I was able to go back to my people and say, I am so proud of you all. We are doing a great job, but we need to clean up a few things. This report will show you areas where data needs to be cleaned to ensure accuracy and increase the overall data quality. Data health check can be found under system administration, data utilities, data health check. Now, initially, if you are a system admin, you need to give yourself rights either individually or create a group, and then you can give access to others to help with this data cleanup. It will be school specific, so just be very mindful though as you work with this because of personal identified information through this. So the report is broken down within 5 columns that you see there. The symptoms, priority, occurrences, the total record count, and then it gives you a rate of how clean your data is. Finding out more information about each of these symptoms is very quick and easy. You'll take your mouse and just hover for a moment. It'll give you more of a definition as to what might be wrong with the data. So just point out the very top one here. It says students who have no student number. Well, that's very important because a student that is enrolled that doesn't have a student number is not going to reflect as a student. And then of course we have down there current year students who have no state ID. I implore you to open up this data health check. Look to make sure that you don't have any currently enrolled students without a state ID. Why? Well, the way our Infinite Campus works between district edition and state edition, if a student doesn't have a state ID, that student will not sync up to state edition. And that impacts several areas. One, if the student leaves your county and enrolls in another county, the next district will not be able to search for them through student locator and find their records. So we lose their records transfer and we lose all of their data from the previous district. We're going to talk about what you need to do here in just a second for some of these issues. All right, but I want to point out a couple of things. Look at the priority. So if it's a high priority, campus feels like that's something that needs to be addressed. But sometimes just because it's a high priority and you see a large number of occurrences, you can click on those individual links and then it will pull for you the student's information. Now, sometimes when we did the conversion from the old student information system to campus, some data was imported without information. So that might be one of the occurrences, especially if you've been on campus for an extremely long time, which we all pretty much have. But go through your student section and make sure all of your high priorities are correct. You know, seeing that 0 is fabulous. Like I said, I would pat people on the back. We're doing great. We don't have anybody currently enrolled without a student ID. I'm always a positive person, so I try to show those positive initiatives with my people. So a couple other things to bring awareness. Students who have similar names will look at the syntax of the name. It doesn't mean that it's going to go through and look for 2 Jennifer Winburns. Sometimes it's going to go through and look for Jennifer Willoughbys. So you can view the data and make the observation, does the data need to be touched? Is it fine? Is it correct? And then you can move on. So moving right along to our next slide, within data health is the census portion. This is going to check and review the student's information on the demographic screen, their household, their relationships tab. Again, you can see those high priorities. People who do not have Social Security numbers. If you are at a high school and you are working with KSIS funding, great place to start when you're being proactive, getting ready for your KSIS reports. So those students with no Social Security numbers, you can see quickly those students that do not have that information. Active students who have no guardian, sometimes that might be true, but look to see, because when the household was built, somebody just failed to click the guardian checkbox within that. So these are great key points of data entry. Again, high priority, you want to really look to see if that information is correct. Scheduling and transcripts. I know we've promoted this training with our high school counselors. So the data health check, scheduling and transcripts is great because it'll go through and look to see if a grade level was not found in the calendar. It's going to check to see sections with no schedule. This is important for your lead report. Those people who do the lead report, this is a great way to find that information. Students enrolled with no schedule, that's a biggie because you want to make sure any student that is enrolled has a complete schedule. That's for funding. And then down to the transcripts, transcripts with no credits, transcripts with no GPA value. Now, when you are working within Data Healthcheck and you click on this, you can pull it into XML or you can actually pull it into Excel. If you pull it into Excel, you can actually filter it by the year and just concentrate on this year specifically. Or if you're a counselor, you want to go double check some things, you can view all years. That is up to you. And then behavior and special education. Again, this is where you reach out to those friends within your districts and you can say, hey, I'm looking at our Data Health Check and I pulled up and I have a list of 31 kids that their IEP is unlocked. This is a great checkpoint before December 1 and for your preschool enrollment counts that take place in October and December and March again. So keep that in mind when those big reports come up. You can, you know, have a sit down meeting or like we do a Teams meeting and be able to share the information. That way, when reporting happens, you can be proactive and have the data as clean as possible and not be running around frantic the day before the report's due. All right. Do we have any questions yet on Data Health Check, or should we just move right to state enrollment verification?
I think you just keep going. Well, we do
Okay.
have one. Let me go ahead. If high priority items are in previous years, way back, do we really need to address them?
No, sometimes you can't, especially previous year. I mean, let's say 10 years ago, students that rolled in with the conversion don't have a student number in Infinite Campus. You can't really correct that. I mean, you could sit down and take the time, but I would definitely just keep a watch on 21-22 school year right now to keep that update, those fields correct.
Thank you. That's the only question right now.
All right. So like we talked about, district information syncing with state edition information. The state enrollment verification report is going to be your best friend to verify that what is in your district is syncing correctly to state edition. Student verification report, the path for that is student information, reports, state enrollment verification. You can run this by a school or by district. What this is going to do is it's going to look for any student in your district that does not have their enrollment synced correctly to state edition. And this causes issues for state reporting. So our state report card information, SDRR information, some of our state reports like our retention report, dropout report, the transient report, we have to have those enrollments correct in state edition for the reporting to be correct.
And Jen, I'm going to jump in on that one because you think, well, why do we care whether the information is syncing to state? There's a lot of federal reporting and state reporting that comes from state edition, not from your district's system. It's much easier for us to pull data from state versus try to hit 170 plus districts. Sites individually. So I know the big one that you will probably all get ears on is the SDRR system. And that data does come from the state edition. So it's really important that we know those records are in state edition so that every student's accounted for rostering and for assessment accountability reporting.
All right, so what you see on the screen is a sample of that report. So once it generates, it will pull for you your total district count and then the state count. And it'll show you exactly, you have 4 missing enrollments at the state. When you are processing this report, you can also use it as another data quality check. Look at your student count report. These should kind of match. You want to rule out data quality ahead of time instead of after reporting. So look at this report and then go look at your other quality assurance reports that we have built within Infinite Campus. So the next slide I want to show you is the first report, which we just saw. The first page of the report, I should say, will show you your overall district. If you run it specifically for a school, then the report that you see on the screen will show. So when you're looking at the report, it will give you the student's name, the SSID, and then the enrollment ID. When you find issues, you have to take another step, and that step is syncing this information to the state, and it's done through a selective sync. So the selective sync, generally only system administrators need to be working with selective syncs. Definitely not something everybody needs their hands in. We don't want to have too many hands fooling around with this syncing state data. So the report path is system administration, data utilities, bring sync state data. And you want to select the selective sync tab. The first tab, you will see everything that syncs between your district and the state. It's an eye opener when you look at it, but you don't really want to look at that. You want to go directly to that selective sync tab. So you can select selective syncs for person ID and enrollment ID. It's good to do them both. So the person ID, you can look and find in campus. So you can search for the student, look on their demographics page, and find their person ID. It's up at the very top in the gray box, the very first thing you see on that student. That is their person ID. You will then come back and type in or copy and paste that number and then click the sync button. It takes a few minutes, so don't be panicked that it's not doing anything. It does take a few minutes. As it's working, you will get a notification screen when it's completed. You can do more than one sync at a time. Just be cautious as you're entering those numbers and making sure your comma is in the right place. So when a sync is complete, you'll notice down here it says records 10 out of 10. So that means all 10 of these personal IDs have synced correctly to the state. Then you'll want to double check and do your enrollment ID. Again, that enrollment ID is from that previous report that's highlighted right here. So there's your enrollment IDs. And then you can come in and select enrollment ID, copy and paste. You don't have to type it in by hand, and then do another sync. Okay, I do want to caution you though, verifying that the sync has been completed is very important because it's a little misleading. So you'll always get a completed option up here. But when you look down here at records synced, you'll see on this one, on the very top one, that it says 0 out of 1. That means the sync didn't happen. Sometimes you'll see, like in the second option down there, 8 out of 8 synced successfully. So you're good to go. But once you've synced and you see that that record is 0 out of 1 or 0 out of 8, you need to stop and do a little research. Reach out for some help. So if you are attempting to sync multiple records, use the hyperlink to see which one did not sync correctly, because it'll tell you exactly. And if the resync fails, then you're going to need to reach out and try to contact the student data tracking office. And if you'll send an email to attendance@education.ky.gov and the person ID, just the number. Remember, do not send any personal identifiable information through that email. The person ID, the student's state identifier number, the SSID, all that is acceptable, but do not send student in for first name, last name, date of birth, that kind of thing. If you are doing a person ID sync and that fails, you can try to do the enrollment ID sync to see if the enrollments can sync But again, if you have any questions or any concerns about syncing the records and it failing, shoot an email to that attendance@education.ky.gov email address. That way, they can get in there and see what needs to happen. Then they can reach back out to you. Sometimes we have to call campus to get a little help.
Jen, can you give some examples of what would cause unmatched records with the state?
So every now and then, there could be a internet issue. Something could fail within your district when you pull the student in from student locator and you hit the save. That information just does not get sent back. Other options is when a student has multiple, like a duplicate user or a duplicate student, excuse me, in State Edition. We tend to find that if there's a duplicate student, then the records do not sync correctly. So there could be 3 Jennifer Winburns at State Edition. I pull in the second one, it's not the correct one. We're going to have issues. And so the enrollments aren't syncing correctly. I hope this doesn't happen, but if somebody creates a student without going through Student Locator, they're not going to sync to state. So they're not going to have a state ID, and then they're not going to have enrollments synced correctly. If the person sync fails, double check that the person ID is used. A lot of times, just to caution you, it's tempting to grab the number off of that state enrollment report, which is their SSID. So you don't want to sync the SSID. You want to see that person ID, which is located on the demographics screen in the upper left-hand corner of the student's demographics page. Holly, can you think of another reason why it wouldn't sync with State Edition? The common things are just a glitch in the system happens every now and then, very rarely. Some other issues are if you have a duplicate student in your database and you use the combined person tool and it doesn't combine them correctly, we lose those enrollments, which then don't sync to the state.
You explained it great, Jen.
Okay. Moving right along, we're going to start talking about our QA reports here. The QA reports are designed to help districts find data that needs some eyes on it. Again, look at your user groups, assign these reports to those people within your district who are supposed to be the kind of what we would call the data steward of the data, those that are going to be doing the state reporting. Make sure they have the ability to access them. So just a tidbit of Excel. I love Excel and I love the filtering tool. So the majority of our reports, they pull in Excel. Once they're open, you can highlight the very top line. Once that line is highlighted, then you can go up to data from your menu bar and select the filter. It looks like an oil filter, and then it'll give you a little drop down arrow across each of your data points. If there's some of our reports highlight errors in yellow, you can actually filter just specifically off of that yellow color, or you can take it down if you're looking for, like the W22 report looks for students that don't have a records transfer. You can highlight blank and just concentrate on those data errors and double check. Okay. So next we're going to move on and we're going to talk about QA student counts, and Holly's going to take over from here.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, I'm going to talk about a few QA reports that will help with data quality. So I'm going to go through a few of them that, what they're used for, and then we'll talk about data quality after. So the QA student counts report is great for verifying your enrollment counts and student details. It's recommended that the report is run daily, monthly, and at the beginning of the year. This report can help you answer those student demographic questions quickly. So QA student counts is different than the than the student demographics report. And this one includes all student enrollments. You can run both the detailed and aggregate report. The detail report contains student level data, and the aggregate includes student totals by grade. Gender and race is also broken down for you. If individual aggregates is selected, this will give you aggregate totals for school and the district. The people who will run this report the most will be building administrators, attendance clerks, and district administrators. And we'll move on to the data quality of the report. The QA student count detail report is great for verifying students you may have missing information for and have questions about, kind of like what Jenna was talking about earlier. To see different enrollment types, you will need to filter down to the enrollment type, which P will be for primary enrollment, S will be for secondary enrollment, or N will be for special education enrollments. It's good for reviewing any issues found in the data health check, like duplicate SSIDs, for example. It's a good resource to use for making sure your students are reporting correctly by comparing the data to different QA reports. So, for example, if there's a student that's in foster care, we know that that student needs to be free and reduced lunch. By reviewing the student and QA student counts and on the QA for reduced lunch reports, which I will later talk about, it will help you verify that that information for the student is correct, or if there needs to be further research done, then it can help you clear up the discrepancy if there is one. So next, I'm going to be talking about the QA SPED report, or special education report. This report helps schools and districts verify their special education counts. So the detail report provides student level data for each enrolled special education student. So primary disability assessment accommodations and alternate assessment eligibility are determined by the last logged IEP across all enrollment types for the reported year. For the QA SPED error report, the highlighted cells indicate data needing correction. So that will help with clean reports and working with SDRR and other reporting. There's also an option for school report card, and that will help verify school report card data. So running the QA SPED error report will help verify IEPs have a primary disability status and a least restrictive environment. We also want to ensure the IEP is locked. So for data quality, we want to verify students designated as special education services only as enrollment service type N are correct in receiving the expected services. IEPs with start and end dates which overlap another locked IEP are to be avoided. Comparing the QA student count report to QA SPED report will help with data comparison and finding issues that need further looking into. Next, we're going to talk about the QA free and reduced lunch report. It can be used to make sure students are reported as free, reduced, or paid correctly. Many people ask for this information throughout the year. This report can give both detail and aggregate numbers. Using the detail report, you can verify your students that are on direct cert, which should be updated monthly. A detail and aggregate report can be run. The detail includes student level information along with gender, race, and enrollment type, and free and reduced lunch status. The aggregate pulls unduplicated student counts with totals by grade and lunch status. For data quality, you want to use this report to make sure your students are reporting correctly, whether that is free, reduced, or paid. For example, a student who is foster, migrant, or homeless, they should be free. So for the frame record, the start date should be the first day that the eligibility is active, and the end date should be the last day of eligibility. For those that are eligible for the entire year, the end date should be 6, 30, 20, whatever the end year is, 2022, let's say. Comparing the QA student counts in this report will help identify discrepancies with the data and allow for data cleanup. Moving on to the QA English Learners report. This lists any students that have an EL English Learner or EL record in IC. The data can be pulled in detail or by aggregate. It also includes the Title III English Learner Biennial report, which is for districts with the Title III grant. This report ensures all EL records are correct and verifies that the students are have EL selected as a program status on the EL tab. So it's important for the SIS coordinator, English learner coordinator, district administration, and school EL staff. This report should be run throughout the school year to ensure data quality. User rights should be limited due to the confidential information in the report. So, moving on to data quality, this report can help make sure exit dates are as of the end of the academic year to verify that the EL accommodations are provided the whole year. So it's also important to ensure that the students' home languages are being reported correctly. Students who are not EL or EL monitored should not be labeled as English or have a language of English. There are 4 ways to identify if a student is correctly being reported as EL. 1, under the program status on the EL tab, the student is selected as EL. 2, English is not the primary language selection. 3, there is at least 1 active instructional accommodation. 4, the student has had at least 1 active EL service. So checking this information will ensure data is correct and EL students are being reported correctly. And that concludes the QA reports that we wanted to cover. All of these QA reports have been developed by KDE to help districts make certain their students are reporting correctly and to have a resource to go to when trying to clear up any discrepancies.
Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Jen. We've gone a little bit over, but I wanted just to mention that there are a couple things. These QA reports are just a few of the other, there's other QA reports available too. We focused on these today because these are critical ones. This data goes and is used for accountability decisions, for assessment reporting, but please, look, there's a whole list of reports that's available out there on our KD website. So do check that out. We hope you find them helpful. What we found is these QA reports have been well received, and we've gotten lots of asked for more. And that's why you see some of the corresponding error reports now. It's very important to be able to run those error reports to make sure you're looking at the things that could be of most problematic and get those resolved before the end of the school year and before SDRR runs especially. The other thing I want to mention with Data Healthcheck is you may not be familiar with Data Healthcheck. We've got that. We negotiated with Infinite Campus. That is a premium service, but when we offered online registration and campus learning last year, we got the Data Healthcheck for free. And because we're going to continue those and we're going to continue to be able to offer those from the state level for the next few years using ESSER money, we are going to get Data Healthcheck and continue. But it's really good to try to run that, and campus acknowledges the fact that the reason they open that up to districts that are doing online registration. It's very helpful to do that before you open your online registration out each year. So there's just a couple additional points. We're a little bit over, Jen. Let's see, we do have, what is it says in Infinite Campus that data health check is not set up for your district. What is the process to correct this? I would put a ticket in with campus on that. If every Kentucky district should have access to it. That was part of our negotiated work with campus on that. They didn't turn it off this year. They could have turned it. Was really just for 1 year, but campus agreed to continue allowing it. And then when we were able to extend it, they agreed to go ahead and leave that open for Kentucky districts to use. And some powerful tools in there. And there's some things that we'll probably look at long term, that if we're not going to have that for free at some point, we might want to try to mirror some of those reports. Somebody does agree. The QA reports have been a wonderful to pull data quickly when you need it, demographic records. So appreciate the feedback. Those are example. If you tell us what you need, we always look at it as an opportunity. If there's something a number of districts need, we can do things one time of the day at the state level and push it out to districts, and we can benefit all the districts, and you're not having to do that stuff independently. We obviously can't do everything, but please do keep the communication open. If there's things that we can enhance or create, we're willing to consider it for sure.